we will explaining how to do applied research for the beginners. First, we need to understand what is applied research. Applied research is a research that takes place in an everyday context to solve specific problems of individuals, organizations, or industries. Applied researchers do not usually seek to solve big, unanswered questions about the universe or society. Rather, their goal is to simply generate answers to solve specific down-to-earth problems that someone is facing. We will call the users of such research clients using sound evidence and thinking. Beginner applied researchers in different organizations or entities can benefit from this guide. For example, research staff in policy and advocacy organizations, non-profit organizations, international development, private sector organizations. Every leader concerned with improving their organization's efficiency and beginner applied researchers in different organizations or entities can benefit from this guide. For example, research staff in policy and advocacy organizations, non-profit organizations, international development, private sector organizations. Every leader concerned with improving their organization's efficiency. And secondly, we will explain how to design and implement an applied research project. Have 5 steps of applied research. The first step is the foundation of all the other steps, as illustrated in the graph. This step of clarifying the research focus has a number of components. There are important different. A. Identify the problem or opportunity your project will address. A useful problem statement contains a specific social condition and negative consequences, both supported with accurate data from reputable sources. Problem versus opportunity. While most applied projects are driven by B. Define the goals and objectives of the research project. Understanding the problem or opportunity underlying the inquiry will help articulate the project's goal and objectives. The research goal states what you intend to accomplish in this research, while objectives state how you will go about it. The research objectives break a large goal into a number of more manageable tasks. The research objectives need to be achievable, necessary, and sufficient for meeting your goal. Research objectives for the goals stated above might include the following. 1. To identify core competencies essential. 2. To identify gaps. C. Clarify logistics. Openly discuss questions pertaining to timelines, information, access, costs, and other logistical issues with the client as early as possible. Step 2. Scan existing information. Once you know which problem, goals, and objectives your research is expected to pursue, it is time for a preliminary review of the existing information to uncover what is known about this case and what new information is needed. Step 2 is important for at least 4 reasons. Includes the following components. First, conduct a preliminary review of relevant information. There are A. Review existing reports and administrative documents. B. An academic literature review. C. Researching the curricula of better performing competitors. D. Talk to key informants and visit sites to observe the phenomena in question. Second, define key terms, operationalize variables if doing a quantitative study. Third, articulate your conceptual framework, CF, or model specifying what might be happening with the phenomenon in question. CF is academics' way of saying a guess. This step is optional and you can skip it, but I urge you to give it a try. Fourth, revisit step 1, the key problem, goals, and objectives of research once you have completed previous steps. Fifth, articulate or revisit research questions. It helps to distinguish main and subordinate questions. Sixth, defining the scope and boundaries of the research, specifying what you will not do in a given research project is another important way to keep your research on track, given that applied researchers usually work within limited time and resource constraints. Here are a few dimensions where boundaries are commonly set. Time, perfect boundaries, level of analysis, statistical significance. Step 3, plan your research tasks and methods. Careful planning will save you a lot of time and effort down the road while also helping you to stay focused on your target. Step 3 may seem complicated, and it can be, if the previous steps are not well executed. I recommend complementing this step with a good research design textbook that explains different research methods in detail. This table can help you to plan and carry out your research systematically if you are using multiple sources of data and/or multiple data collection methods. Without a systematic approach, important questions, perspectives, or methods might be omitted from your research. If the research uses only one source or method of data collection, you may not need this table. Step 3. Plan your research tasks and methods. Careful planning will save you a lot of time and effort down the road while also helping you to stay focused on your target. Step 3 may seem complicated, and it can be, if the previous steps are not well executed. I recommend complementing this step with a good research design textbook that explains different research methods in detail. This table can help you to plan and carry out your research systematically if you are using multiple sources of data and/or multiple data collection methods. Without a systematic approach, important questions, perspectives, or methods might be omitted from your research. If the research uses only one source or method of data collection, you may not need this table. We can following the recommendation step a good research design. 1. Select the research design framework, experimental or descriptive. Most actual research projects combine elements of one or more designs, are experimental designs, non-experimental or descriptive, longitudinal studies, and case studies. 2. Specify the information needed to answer each research question. If you have articulated a clear set of questions and sub-questions, it will be easy to identify what kind of information you need. 3. Identify data sources for each piece of information needed. Data sources can include people, documents, databases, journals, books, and actual sites which you may observe. 4. Specify how you will sample your data sources. To classify of sampling are random or probability and non-random or non-probability. For non-random or non-probability sampling has 3 sampling methods as follows by convenience sampling, judgment sampling, and snowball sampling. 5. Specify variables and measurements if doing a quantitative study. 6. Select data collection methods. The 5 most commonly used methods of data collection include observation, focus group, interview, survey, and a review of documents. Each data collection method has its own strengths and limitations. Applied researchers almost always use some form of an interview. 3 general types of interview are as follows: structured interviews, semi-structured interviews, in an unstructured or open-ended interview. 7. Design data collection instruments forms questionnaires and procedures corresponding to each data collection method if you plan on using interviews, surveys, focus groups, or observations. Pilot your data collection instruments and revise them as needed. 8. Identify data analysis methods and tools for qualitative or quantitative data as relevant. Specify data collection, coding, and analysis procedures. 9. Plan how you will address validity and reliability issues. 10. Develop a schedule using a Gantt chart for carrying out the tasks listed in this step. 11. If doing formal proposal, add a budget and information about the research team's qualifications. Use this method when you need information that cannot be attained from documents or people, such as the understanding of complex processes or relationship dynamics. Step 4. Collect, analyze, and interpret data. Once you have a detailed methodology, it is time for more in-depth and nuanced data. Step 4 is the most demanding part of research. Collecting and analyzing information will require extensive brain capacity. The first piece of advice in this step is to start writing your report draft before you even start collecting primary data. This tip can prevent information overload and free up more brain space for communicating with respondents and thinking. 1. Organize the information using a sample report outline to free your brain for heavy lifting. Organizing information starts early, long before you analyze the information you have collected. Otherwise, you will have too much information to keep track of, which will overwhelm you and delay your work. Moreover, not all insights on different aspects of the research come in linear order. A typical report usually includes the following sections below. The sample table of contents and the checklist for writing a consultancy reports. Use this checklist to develop a working draft of your report. If you follow this advice, you will be pleasantly surprised that by step 4 you have generated at least half of your report's content. 2. Collect data. Here are some valuable tips for data collection if you are using an observation, focus group, interview, or survey. Collecting data from these primary sources is usually referred to as field research or field work. The success of your field work depends on how diligent and thorough you have been in the previous steps. Once you start collecting more and more data, you will be asking yourself a number of questions, such as, how do I make sense of the data? How do I draw practical recommendations for the client? 3. Analyze the data. The data you have collected can be either qualitative or quantitative. Quantitative data refers to numerical data such as ages of respondents or the number of yes answers. Qualitative data includes text, stories, open-ended responses in surveys and interviews, audio and video materials, and images. Most applied research projects use qualitative data or a mix of qualitative and quantitative data. The data analysis process can involve the following tasks. A. Identify patterns in your findings. B. Compare patterns across different categories or from different questions. 2. Find interesting insights. C. Interpret your findings in light of your key questions. Analyzing qualitative and quantitative data requires special skills. The links provided in this sentence have useful information for beginners and usually is specialized software. For large and complex qualitative and quantitative data, you may need relevant classes and obtain specialized software, or you may need to contract out such tasks to people with complex data analysis skills. 4. Draw practical recommendations for the client. The recommendations answer now what questions and specify how a client should act on the research findings. You will draw recommendations from your analysis of findings to answer your questions. For each recommendation, clearly explain 1. What this recommendation involves in some detail. 2. Why it is important. Provide a rationale for your recommendation. 3. How might the recommendation be implemented and what should the client be wary of? Step 5. Revise, polish, and share your work. The most common end products of applied research are the presentation and full report. As mentioned above, you need to clarify in advance what kind of end product your client wants to receive so that you do not waste time and effort on the wrong deliverable. 1. The final presentation of your work is ideally conducted before you turn your final report over to the client because this can be a good opportunity to obtain in-person feedback from the client on key findings and recommendations and to adjust as needed. The feedback should be integrated or addressed before you submit your final report. In terms of the presentation content, try to curb and urge to include all information you have collected even if you think all of it is important. You need to trim the content of your presentation as much as possible to leave only the information that the client absolutely needs. Here is a basic sample presentation outline we recommend. A. Opening. Start your presentation with a powerful hook that can grab and hold your audience's attention. B. Project focus. Briefly and clearly convey your project goal, objectives, and key questions. C. Methodology. In 1 or 2 sentences, very briefly outline the sources of your information and how you collected it. D. Key findings and recommendations. State what you recommend that the client should do based on your findings. Sometimes, the findings and recommendations sections can be separated. E. closure. Make sure the presentation has a powerful finale resolution or an answer to the hook you started your presentation with. 2. Written report is the most common form of deliverable for the client. It is usually accompanied and preceded by a presentation. Applied research has a lot of unknowns, and it requires some planning which will be adjusted as you move forward. It is therefore not a linear but a reiterative process. Subsequent steps will often force you to revisit the previous steps. It requires connecting the dots, and yet not all dots will be found in the limited time you have. You may dig out a lot of data trying to gain depth and clarity on the issue, but not all of that data will be equally useful or relevant. Not all of the data you collect will be self-evident, and much of it will require careful interpretation. To find your treasure, you will need the right tools, process, support, resilience, and creativity. This guide attempted to provide you with such tools, process, and guidance for working on applied research. I hope this guide will help you to design and deliver high-quality and rewarding work you will be proud of. I wish you the best of luck in your research journey. Please answer the question below and send your answer to get the research certificate.